This is the Jamaica Selectboard agenda, Jamaica Selectboard meeting for Monday, the 22nd of October. And we are prepared to start the meeting. Oh, good, it's my turn. All right, let's call for any late additions to the agenda.
I have a late addition. Jamaica Community Arts Council would like to ask a question of the select board regarding moving in some equipment for the Halloween haunted house that's happening in 2 weeks.
Sound like a plan?
So we want to ask it.
As is your sort of the position you've grown into these many months, is don't let me forget.
I won't.
Good. Next item for business is the approve the minutes of the 24th of September Select Board. I have an extra copy if anybody hasn't had a chance to look them over. Did you get a copy of the minutes?
Yeah.
So that worked for you? The agenda's the only one that you want.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I brought you a copy just in case you didn't have
No,
one.
it was just that one thing, it was odd.
Alrighty, so we're all happy. Let's take a look at the minutes of the 24th. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections, questions? Anything that needs to be
I didn't see it. As
reviewed?
long as all those parcel numbers are right. I didn't see anything.
I have one, in the first paragraph on the second page, third line down, says Tom made a motion to full the request. We believe that should have been fulfill.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what my notes said.
So we'll make that fulfill the request. Number 10, 3 or 4 lines down, it says composting. We are required to collect good garbage and put in a special container. Do we have a definition of good garbage?
Is that some food garbage?
Does that should be food garbage?
I suspect so.
I hope so, because that made more sense than good.
Well, pigs think it's pretty good.
It's tasty, yeah. Anyway, any other corrections on it?
I move we accept the correct.
I move it, do I have a second?
September 20.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are accepted. I would like to personally thank Andy for filling up in my absence, never mind. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. Okay. Number 2 on the item list is the approve the timesheets for, that's actually number 3. Town office, listers, highway, transfer station, sign the select board orders. Those are routinely put to the end of the session so we don't bore our audience to death while we're struggling for that. Number 5, discuss and appoint new members to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We had, you guys had a vote on Pat McClellan, correct?
We did.
Yes, you did. All right. There was a little technicality that was reminded, because I don't remember these things, that an item that is added to the agenda as a late addition cannot be moved on. It's good for information purposes and stuff, but voting and spending money must be warned to the public before we can take any action. Therefore, we technically, sorry, Patrick, you're just not here. So I would, and also, the Zoning Board of Adjustment also needs to be voted on as well. How many people did you need us to vote on this for?
Patrick and Lisa.
Patrick and Lisa Mann, yes.
Yeah, Chris and I and Brian were all actually voted.
You're all set.
It was just one of those little oversights.
Yeah, it's one of the, we don't do enough.
For the record, I was hesitant to appoint.
Were you? Yes. It's one of those little things in the rule book that you read over and say, that's nice, and move on and forget about. I apologize for that. Nothing.
Well, that being said, I will make a motion
Yes.
to appoint Patrick McClellan to the Planning Commission
What an opportune time for that.
and the Zone Board of Adjustment. Or you want to do those two?
Separate. Yeah,
Okay,
let's do
go
that first, yeah. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do I have any further discussion about Mr. McClellan joining us on the Planning Commission? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Mr. McClellan, thank you very much. Number 2 on that list of issues is the Zoning Board of Adjustment, another situation that must be voted on by the planning, by the, what are we guys called? The select board. We have Lisa Mann and Patrick need to be voted, or are potential members of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, should we decide to do so.
I will make a motion to appoint Lisa Mann and Patrick McQuillan to the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
I have a second?
Okay.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. You show up. Every time you come in, we're going to point you to something good.
That's the rule.
This is how we work here. And I suppose you'll get back to Lisa.
Yes,
Thank
yeah, so that you just voted Lisa and Patrick both.
Onto the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Yes,
So now you have a full Board of Adjustment.
awesome, that's great.
Excellent. Number 6. We have an opportunity to get a grant to help us write the hazard mitigation assistance. The town has to routinely produce a document for hazard mitigation planning. Planning Commission's been working on it for quite some time. We ran into a glitch, and we believe we've resolved the glitch, but what happens is the town must decide if we are willing to make a 25% match of the money. In order to get considered for the grant, we have to agree to match the 25% that we are able to, as well as willing to. And do you want to speak to that any further?
Just that our LHMP is going to be expiring in February of 2020, and normally it takes...
The LHMP is?
The Local Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Right.
It was first created in, the last one was created in 2015. It was approved by FEMA then, and this one has to be approved as well. It's kind of a time-sensitive thing, but I was notified that we could get in on an early round of grant funding for it to enable us to have more time to prepare this document and more time to pay for it too. So it seemed to be a really good idea. And I think one of the reasons that we were both a little confused about that at the beginning is that during the last update in 2015, when this plan was updated or newly created then, the funding actually came through Wyndham Regional, and the town didn't have to separately apply for it. The state since changed its rules, and now we have to actually go through the process of applying for it.
Yeah. Which in fact we may end up hiring, quote unquote hiring, Wyndham Regional to do it anyway, because they're obviously the most skilled people to do it, but it's a machinations within the state funding scheme.
Right, it's just the way the money flows.
Yeah, or doesn't, sometimes. At any rate, so what we need to decide is, are we prepared or interested in producing 25% of the matching grant? Do you have a sense of how much it's going to cost?
Yeah. It probably would not be more than $3,000 or $3,500, and that's tops. Because we actually have a plan in place that we can work off of, and we have planners at Wyndham Regional who are familiar with this process and for us doing it.
Right.
And it looks like we had a pretty good plan from before.
I can't vote on that because of course I produced it. So
So
Certainly
is
have
the
hand-
total cost $3,500?
No,
So that would be
the
the
total
20.
cost is about up to about $12,000.
Okay, so the $3,500
That's
is
just
the
our
25%.
cost,
Okay,
right.
I just wanted.
Right, yeah.
And
And
we
this
don't
is
know for sure because
required
we've
to-
never
in
done
order
it.
to get emergency funding if there were another situation like Irene or even remotely close to Irene. This plan has to be in place for us to get money from the state and from FEMA. So,
What this does is, if for example, in Irene, there was a funding scheme that gave us 75% from the feds, 25% was our responsibility, but by fulfilling these little situations, the state picked up 12% of that. So we only had to pay for half of what our cost would have been. So we're trying to maintain that. They changed the rules. We walked around in circles for a couple of days trying to figure out what had happened, because I didn't remember getting any money, and as it turns out,
well,
I didn't.
there was a reason you didn't remember,
Yeah.
because it actually hadn't gone through this process.
Which is one of the better reasons for me not remembering things that we've come up with over the last bunch of months. So anyway, what do you think about that? Is this something that we think we should do?
Is our alternative is to do it ourselves? I mean, or what is, I mean, because we need to do it.
We have to do it.
Yeah. which I don't
I
like
guess
that
it would
alternative.
be, but we'd still have to hire professional
Hire
planners
somebody, right.
and maybe
So if we're gonna
not
hire
use
somebody, this is
litigation.
a chance to get some funding.
Right.
Does this need to be funded in this year's budget? Do we have money in this year's budget? I mean, is it an unexpected
when that-
expense?
yeah,
Could
I'm not sure
could we
when that
wait
would be.
until,
I think it
July
probably
next
wouldn't
year?
come out of it until, the grants aren't gonna be awarded, I think, until the end of November, so
okay,
it
so
probably
okay.
would be pushed out a little bit.
What we're doing tonight is a requirement, just saying that we agree to do it,
Okay.
but we don't actually have to spend any money.
Put the money
on getting
down.
money.
Yeah,
that's-
there's no,
No money
Don't
out.
have
There's
to put
no,
up
there's no
any money
financial
right now.
impact
Oh,
in
no.
the immediate.
no, not even.
Yeah, I have the actual, I've got a blank version of it. It's just saying we acknowledge the applicant, us, to be considered for a state matching grant to cover 25% local matching share in connection with the proposed plan for the FEMA hazard mitigation systems grant. So they're just saying they're gonna pick up part of our
Okay, and so we can
Find out.
anticipate for that in the next.
Exactly, exactly.
Where that'll come from.
Mm-hmm. And I think probably, since most of it's done, it's just a case of, changing names back on this side. I'm not sure it'll be how much it'll cost, and I don't have a sense of it because we've never done it before. So the question is, do we, as a board, wish to acknowledge that we can, we'd like to be considered for a state matching grant?
Yes.
I have
I
a,
will move
I'll second.
to do that.
he moves to do that, just write down move to do that.
I'm going to.
And
I'll second it.
A second to do that. Any further discussion? Is it clear what we're doing? We're just agreeing.
Do I have to read this number 6?
Huh? All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Oh, boy, then you have,
No, I mean, I'm not trying to, is there any further discussion? Do you have any other questions?
no, it's just that there was no breath in between.
Trying to move on. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will accomplish this tomorrow and make that work. Okay, number 6, that was number 6. Number 7, discuss and decision regarding the disposition of the old Cheney mill. Now, this must be one of the items that has increased our audience multifold.
Hopefully, that's it.
Yeah, otherwise they've got pitchforks in the torches they're waiting for us outside. Who would like to start the discussion of the disposition of the old Cheney mill? Someone from the board like to do that?
Sure, I could. I mean, many of this is kind of rehashed, but 30-second overview. The old Cheney Mill, which is located on Town Garage Road, had some damage done this spring due to wind. It initiated a conversation amongst a lot of us in the board of what to do with the building. There was some insurance money available to fix the roof, and it was a great opportunity to kind of say, hey, what are we fixing the roof for? Just to put a new roof on a building that's just sit there again. So over the course of the summer, there's been a lot of effort and a lot of people involved, talking about alternatives, what the building could be used for, and hopefully, if we've got some insurance money, so hopefully put a roof back on it to be done, to use it for something, as opposed to just saying, hey, we got a nice roof on an old building. So that's kind of a lead in, and I think Greg Jolly, if I'm correct, is going to kind of speak to what this group has kind of formed, a community organization of different entities that have been kind of looking at some alternatives and researching some stuff.
Excellent. So I'd like to throw it to you, sir.
I think what's really important.
Before you go, identify yourself again.
Greg Jolly. I think what's really important about this particular project, it's not since the town hall restoration that I have seen so much civic interest outside of the usual people who are interested in town business and town works come together on a project of this magnitude, really. And so I think what's been going on in the ad hoc group that's come together, first thing was to establish, as Greg said, is it worth putting money into putting a roof on it? And I think pretty quickly the group decided it was in the town's interest to preserve the building, because it is the last surviving mill in the town, and this town was basically built by the mills. in the 19th century. And this is your last example of this type of architecture. That does beg the question, as Greg said, what do you do with the building once you've got a hat on it that's shedding water? I think that can go into a lot of speculations, there's a lot of ideas, but again, I direct your attention back to a group of close to 20 people who are showing interest, and not just talking interest, but active interest. So I think I'd like to have the other people in the group speak to their particular areas, and if the select board has any particular questions to ask them, but I'd like to center down to the real concern here, which is to do anything with this building, no matter what it is in the future, the roof's repair within the next month is absolutely crucial. If it goes through the winter, there is no reason for any more discussion as to use or future use or any speculation. So I'd like to just keep that in mind. The real thing that needs to happen is that the roof has to be repaired for preservation.
Could you differentiate between have to be repaired versus have to be patched in anticipation?
I consider this is more than a patch. You're repairing. You had the underlayment ripped off, so that'll have to be done. Then you'll have to put the roofing back on. You also have an issue on the other side of the building, which I think might be more problematic. That needs to be more than simply patched. To me, a patch is you go in, you drive in a couple of screws, and you use some caulk and you're ready to go. You've got more serious issues than a simple patch. You're not going to get a full roof in this repair, but it is a repair, and I want the town to understand the scale of why this is so pressing.
Do we believe we can turn it around in that timeframe? Have you done any research with contractors?
There's been, they've spoken with Asa Goodband.
Okay, yeah.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
So Greg, go ahead.
We have, I've spoken with Asa, I mean, certainly under a time crunch at this point. He's given us a couple of estimates. One, to do what we're calling, I mean, by definition, a patch, I guess. But that would be to kind of just stabilize the building, stabilize the roof, get it through the winter, and then be able to do a full replacement of the roof in the springtime. What we're held to through our insurance is we just need to have this contracted by November 1st. We don't have to have the work completed. So, you know, as we proceed through this, we would contract with ASA. I mean, he came back, we had two formal quotes. He came back substantially less than the other one. And that we'd contract with him to do this temporary patch, repair, and then do a full-on fix in the springtime.
And he has said that he has the time in the next, he said he could squeeze this in before
That
winter.
he can, right, exactly.
Okay. That's
Not the full job, but the,
right, just
but
the patching, that's
the
fine.
stabilized.
Okay, good. That's good.
Just one point of note. We've been talking about this for a long, long time, and Greg went through the town's procurement procedures properly for this sort of a project. We only got 2 responses. ACES was the most reasonable.
Mhm.
Plus, ACES work for us in the past has always been very satisfactory and timely, and it does a good job. Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry. Just want to make sure we understood that, even though we only had 2, we attempted to get more.
Right,
Bids.
right, yeah. Okay, does that answer that? Yeah?
Yes.
Yep, okay, I'll turn it back to,
I think somebody else in the group who are looking at this might
Yes.
speak to it.
Yeah, I think one thing we did is
Identify yourself.
oh, Michael Abrams. One thing we did is we contacted the Preservation Trust of Vermont, and they have a field service program, and they turned us on to a grant that would allow us to do a condition assessment. And this is a full condition assessment that would tell us what it would take financially to make it habitable and used by the public. And that's structural, heating, insulation, all of these elements. So they would give us a rough estimate of what it would take to do this if we wanted to turn this space into a public use space. So this grant, we just applied for it. It's a matching grant. We put up the half of it.
Say who we are.
The Jamaica Historical Foundation. And so we basically it would take about 3 months for the person to actually be assigned to us. And this person would be an engineer, fully capable of assessing the situation. And so, based on that, we would know what we can do with this building. And I think that the roof repair is crucial to this step, because there is a few months to go on. And so I think that's something we should consider.
And I want to add that we have had some people in the meantime look at the building prior to doing a full-on assessment to say that it is a solid building. I mean, it is worth saving. I mean, it does have the possibility of saving, as opposed to we're going to find out in 3 months that it's going to fall down. One of the people that has looked at it he's also part of this program to do the assessments through the state. And then also Jenna from the Preservation Trust has looked at it enthusiastically. I mean, from a non-engineering perspective, but just from a historical perspective, said that the building is valuable in more ways than one, not just financially, but just historically, the potential for the future and things like that. So,
Are we getting any numbers at all?
for the full project,
Well, I hear full and I hear roof. I guess whatever numbers
Yeah.
you're getting, I would like to know.
So right now, the only number is for the roof. The full project, really, is gonna take some effort from brainstorming, community involvement, what do we wanna see this building become? And also what the assessment says. There's gonna be some limitations, that we're not gonna rent it out for apartments or things like that, but it will be community space, it could be exhibit space, event space, both indoor and outdoor. The number is to be determined for sure. And we can kind of script it to say we want $1 million thing and we want
What about the
100,000.
roof?
What about the roof repair?
Oh, the roof, actually, the cost was $20,000
For the
it was-
repair or for the,
for a full roof.
what about the repairs?
The repairs was gonna be incorporated into that, so that in hope that we would do a portion of it now to get it shored up and then be able to reuse that portion
But we don't know what that means. We don't know if it's 10 or if it's 5.
of
or if
the
it's-
of the initial
20.
part.
Yeah,
He had given 6.
6, okay.
Yep.
And insurance covers some of that?
Insurance would cover up to 26,000. We would have to show obviously invoices, et cetera, so.
What type of roof is it?
And it would be the same that's on there now. There was some estimates to be able to insulate it. There's some discussion of whether that insulation process was necessary to receive certain grants.
I'm sorry.
But-
Apparently it's not necessary to receive such grants.
Right, exactly, and I had found that same answer, right. I mean, it depends on what you want your long-term use to be, but I think the group, and maybe I'm speaking speaking out turn, the group feels that, I mean, it's not gonna be a year-round, fully insulated building with, I mean, it may go that way, but it's not the initial vision of it.
What roof is on there now?
It's a corrugated metal, so it's metal, yeah.
And they're gonna put the same?
They would put that metal back
Same
on.
kind of metal?
Same kind of metal, right.
And
We
they
had
can-
an estimate for,
They can do that for $20,000?
that's what Ace had said, yep. He
Would
said it
that
was a
be
15-day quote before the metal prices go up. It's a 15-day quote before the metal prices go up.
Would that be a combination of donations and town money
For the long term, or for just the roof?
for the roof?
The roof would be fully covered by insurance.
Okay. So the long term.
The
would-
long term, it would be a composite of grants, possibly town money, I mean, we'd have to all decide that. But grants and fundraising and multiple sources.
So this is discussion and decision regarding the disposition of the building. Can we vote on repairing it at least with the insurance money, or do we have to have a whole roof
Well,
put on, or?
We wanted to show that there was a future for the building before deciding on the roof.
But there's no future if that hole in the roof doesn't get fixed. So-
Oh, for sure.
So that's
Right.
what I'm like, can we do that? Do we want to do that?
If there's-
Before we hear everything else?
Yeah, but my take too is if there's no expenditure, if insurance is covering 100%,
That's what I mean.
why wouldn't we do that to give
Yeah.
things, give
There
the
was some
foundation
question at the
opportunity to
beginning
assess the
of
building?
the summer, is that we would fix the roof and all of a sudden that we don't have, it's a hat on it, and it's,
How about the flood zone? Where does that come in?
it's certainly in the flood zone. The building has the ability to be designed, or the new building, or the rehabilitation of the building without any infrastructure in the bottom, you know, that it basically be designed as a pass-through to meet the requirements of being in the flood zone.
It also doesn't affect the grants you will apply for.
Does or does
It
not?
does not affect the grants.
Really?
I was wondering that too, whether the flood zone was
Yes,
going to.
a lot of the projects that the Preservation Trust of Vermont deals with are in flood zones because they're usually types of buildings that are mills and old factories and things like that.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I think's important at this point is, again, there's been a lot of speculation and excited speculation for the use of the building. But if I was sitting on the select board, the thing that I would consider is even if none of this project goes forward, what you're doing is preserving the building for perhaps in 20 or 30 years that it could be rehabilitated. What you're doing is you're stabilizing the structure so you don't lose the structure, which you have been over the decades paying insurance on. So this is one of your instances where you actually can get money back from the insurance company instead of paying it out.
Well, there is another flavor to that, and you bring it up timely in response to your question. It sounds like a no-brainer if we got money, put the roof on. There's another piece to that. We can elect to not put the roof on, and we still get a significant portion of the insurance money, and we just will never get any more insurance for that building again. So let's just, I don't know the exact amount, 20,000, let's throw that up. If we elect to do nothing, that 20,000, if the building belonged to the Historical Society, would go into your coffers. So if you were to purchase the building, if the Historical Society was to purchase the building from the town for $1.98, you would then get the 20K to do with what you will. We, the town, would no longer be encumbered by this building and the liabilities it imposes. You would then have the luxury of whatever you want to do with it. Or nothing, and have that added to your coffers to build another structure, fix the ones you've got, give the guys bonuses, however you want to do with it. So there is that other piece to this, that we don't have just one path.
But with the insurance, if we insure the building, well, how are they getting the money?
If
we
they-
sell them the building,
We sell them the building,
we're then giving them the 20,000 that we're
we
receiving.
can give it to them, they can,
I mean, we'd have to.
insurance, whoever does it.
You understand what I'm
I
saying?
do.
Because we're the entity that's insured, not
Exactly.
the Historical Society, so we're gonna
Right.
check, and then we would have to give them the check.
That's right.
Okay.
That would be,
Just to
that would be the way we
Yeah.
kind of planned on it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't hold back on it, you may need a commission for the chair. But for the most part, that would give you another option, which may, I mean, in the face of, we only have one option, and that is put a roof on and save this building forever. Or, oh geez, that's 20K we could use for something else if this building is not viable. We don't have enough time to figure out whether this building, because you're saying about 3 months to get an issue, to get a response back from the Preservation Trust. Say again?
A condition assessment.
Condition assessment back. So that would inform us better. We don't have that much time. If we start a contract with ASA to put the roof on, and that's got, what, a week left or something like that?
Before November 1st, yeah.
Before November 1st. So there's more moving pieces here than just, oh goody, this is a nice building, let's fix it.
I don't think that's what I'm hearing. I think, I don't understand, but if we put in an insurance claim, we could put in another one if something happened.
Not if, well,
Well, the insurance company did provide the option that we take that off of our policy and basically a buyout of it, I guess, I mean, and we collect some monies and say, we're done with it. And that's what led to the discussion of saying, do we want to be done with it, or is there some community support for doing something with the building? And that's what led to this, where we're at now. I think we've seen that there's enough community to support that $20,000. It's certainly a lump of money to go do something, that's an option.
We said it was 26 now.
26 to fix it,
So-
but to buy it out. But there seems to be, in the long term,
So will ASA allow us to just patch it? And let's say we decide at a later time, well, we don't want to put the whole roof on.
If we patch it, it won't be ACE's say. ACE will give us a bill for patching it, and the insurance company will cover that bill.
I'm saying, but then.
But not the rest of it.
Is the whole project,
We-
is the,
ASA we did.
is the patching dependent on us going back and him coming back in the spring and putting a new roof on?
I believe so.
Can we just do one piece of it and say, well, we thought about it and we found out the building
I'm
isn't
imagining
worthwhile,
so.
so we're gonna pull the plug on it?
we'd be done with the insurance money. We'd only be able to cover the 6,000.
Yeah.
But I imagine we
I see.
could say, we're done with, I mean, ASA would say, sure, I've only done half of my contract, but that's it.
Sure.
I
Okay,
didn't ask that
the
question, but
trick
the
is-
insurance money would be done.
Exactly, the rest of the insurance money that we hadn't spent will be gone.
Would be gone?
Yeah.
If we didn't fully, if we only spent 6,000, they're only paying up to what they're only paying us what we spend, up to $26,000.
You have a
Can
question?
I just see, what's the condition of the rest of the building after you get the roof? I didn't even know until today there was such a place. And I have no idea, is there electricity in it? Is there plumbing? Is the inside anything that we could work with? I don't know.
It's a solid structured building. It's 40 by 60 feet. It's 3 stories tall. It's built in the mid-1800s. It's all post and beam, all hand-hewn wood. A lot of cross-cut wood, which puts, the actual boards as opposed to the logs on it. I mean, it's a very interesting architectural building. And being it's 100 and some odd years old. It's needs some work, obviously. I mean, it's been uninhabited, does not have electricity, no plumbing. I mean, it's been used as a barn, as a town garage. It was a temporary town garage when our new one was being built, and prior to that, in the 70s, it was the town garage. So it's had a long history of use for the town, but it also has the historical society.
What's the condition of the bottom frame?
The bottom frame, there is some still work and whatnot that needs to be done. And this is all just by casual observation by a number of people in the room here and by the Preservation Trust person, but there's no full-on engineering study that's been done.
I can attest also as a builder that I did walk through it after speaking with Karen, and she mentioned about the building, and I did walk through the whole building, and it is definitely worth saving.
Yeah.
There's no way you can replace it for the cost, and if it's an historical significant building in our town, with a mill, and we have insurance money to patch the roof, it's well worth doing, and then for possibilities in the future, there's all kinds. I think it's definitely worth saving.
Identify yourself for the camera.
Joel Katz. I want to look down the road to how this would be structured and what limitations there would be if the building was renovated and went into the use that Greg was talking about. Does the Historical Society and the Preservation Society have limitations on what the use of the building can be?
I don't have that information, do you all?
In other words, if it's a historical building,
Yeah.
how much renovation can you put into the building or lose its status?
I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna guess that there's probably gonna be some restrictions on how the money's used.
Yeah.
Getting
It's not on the register.
Many restrictions
Yeah.
we're not on the registry either for the town hall. And we are not allowed to touch anything on the outside unless we have permission from the Historical or the Preservation Society. So there are many restrictions.
A lot of the restrictions would be put in place, I would say, based on what the plan is for the building and where the funding comes from. If we just found some miraculous donor of $1 million and here he gave it to you or she and
I guess the check with that.
then you could do whatever you want with the building. But I mean, if there's gonna be some hinges, like some
Yes.
restrictions based on where you get your funding from. And that will be based on what the plan is.
When this first came up to the board, we were concerned about the hole in the roof. Now it's parlayed into almost a town meeting, this discussion here about what the future of it, which is fine, I think it's great. But We need to fix the hole.
Right, yeah, we're not voting on
Or
the
put,
on the
or
future of
put,
the
or
building.
put a roof on it.
Yeah, I think I brought this up and the group is here to just have some confidence that there can be a plan for the building. Not deciding what the plan is or when the plan, but that there can be a plan for the building that's feasible and that it then makes sense to fix the roof. We didn't want to say fix the roof and then just waste all the money.
So,
That's my-
Go ahead.
Just that we were sitting here a couple months ago thinking that if we don't fix that, there's no hope for the building.
Yeah.
No matter what we do with it. So that's where I'm still kinda at.
It's
That
changed
that
dramatically.
hasn't been fixed yet.
No, but a lot of our opinions have changed dramatically now that we've had a chance to see the upstairs. I have a question for the planning commission, the historical commission. I've alluded to the two options you all have. One, will the town will put the roof on, option one. Option two, you buy it from us, you put the roof on. Option three, you buy it from us, keep the money and run. Have you guys fully vetted option three? That you're sure that maintaining this building and what your choices are around that building are preferable to option three? Yes.
I'll speak for myself. Option 3, I'm not interested in.
Okay.
Building is what's drawing the interest here,
Okay.
of the individuals here. Just to take the money and run, that sounds very American. I'm not interested. I'm just not interested in that as an option. From being in the town for so long and that mill being what would be sacrificed for that.
Okay. I hear that. I'm just asking if you all have had this discussion without tiptoeing around the owner's option of destroying the building and selling the wood.
What does it cost to insure?
Well, Lou's got his hand up. Lou's got his hand up, yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm speaking for the Historic Foundation. We had a meeting last week and we discussed this kind of at length. And we feel that it's best to keep the building as a town building and have the Historic Foundation be the lead as far as getting grants, doing the rehab and the like. And the reason we feel that is because right now we have a very active Historic Foundation, but we don't have any paid staff. Who knows what this group is going to be like in 10 years? Without a core paid staff in place to manage some kind of building just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're talking about a lot of volunteers. So our thinking is that the town continue to own it. The Historic Foundation would be the lead in forming a committee. And the committee would be anybody in town who's interested in the building. And then we would obviously be part of it. Part of the reason that works is that although we are not now, we are in the process of filing for a 401c3. 501c3. In order to do fundraising, you have to have that kind of status, so people are willing to donate and then get their tax incentive. So that's part of the reason why we think the Historic Foundation could be the lead entity.
All that would take is, we would need a formal agreement between the Historical Foundation and the town.
Yeah, and that, in my quasi-legal brain, is always muddled to begin with, but starting at the point of you all form a committee, starts raising money for something that belongs to the town. Any grant proposals, any movement in that direction is going to have to be coordinated through the town, including approval of your design, approval of your interests, approval of your fantasies. Now, not knowing what you guys are going to look like in 10 years, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be here in 10 years. So you also have the unknown of the town's support through the select board.
Well, that's one of the proposals, and the Preservation Trust had this as, this has been done before. That's where the Historical Foundation or some subsidiary of it, a 401(c), would take on a 100-year lease and have full control over what they do with the building.
That'd be an option.
We would then,
give you a
we would
lease.
say, give them the lease, and then it wouldn't have this two-way, you need us to approve it before they did it, and da-da-da.
All right, that sounds a good idea.
It doesn't affect the donations and private funding, because, and the grants, because there's no difference if it's a municipality or if it's a 501(c). So people give anyway. It's just that more people will give, and in a more enthusiastic way, to something that is a nonprofit as opposed to a municipality.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's part of my concern. If you all are putting all your time and energy and funds into a municipal building, you lose control over it. But if this works, as he's suggesting, we can get a 100-year lease where you now have veto power over what happens. It doesn't have to come through the select board as such. And if we can get that legally put together in a fashion where you all have autonomy, although I hate to be a pain, I'm not entirely sure the town is going to be interested in giving you total autonomy with a building that belongs to the town.
Right, I was just thinking
Even
that.
if it's leased. So there's a lot of little nuances in this thing.
Because if the town owns it, we have fiscal responsibility. And then does that have any kind of conflict? The fact
Lawyers'
that
fees, I hear lawyers' fees in
We own
here.
the building.
One thing to consider in that concern is that I assume that this group will be going forward with getting grants from various organizations around historical preservation, which, as Mrs. Flowers said, with the town hall, there are specific parameters that you can't go out of. So that would be a form of insurance for the select board, that the building wouldn't go off in a crazy direction and then you'd be saddled with it later in the future. There are going to be restrictions due to the monies that they'll be able to get through grants.
As we have noted, yes, I have another question.
Just a quick question about geography. The building sits in the town garage area.
Mm-hmm.
How big is that area? And if you set up whatever you set up, a 100-year lease or whatever, you would lease the land as well. How much of the land is the town willing to give up?
You mean the lease to this building?
Yeah,
I don't
because
know
you
the
got to
answer to
think in terms of parking and.
Sure,
and
I don't have the answer to that. I'm not sure you've thought about that.
I do have a speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's a township road is a 2-lane road, and it goes straight towards the old barn and turns. That would remain a 2-lane road, and quite in its full width. Our mill building, or the town's mill building, would be, I would say, you would need some space on the town garage side, but not a lot. You would need that space for accessibility and access, because the second floor door on the town garage side would be it seems like it would be the best place for access.
Sure, yeah.
And there's plenty of room on the north side of the building and around the back a bit for parking. And this is a piece of property that would not interfere with the truck traffic. And also, this building would not interfere with what the town staff does is they bring trucks in, dump rocks, gravel stuff, and they do that in a certain amount of area. And this area would still be out of our way.
I think I hear what you're saying. So then Joel, you had asked a question on that.
I just wanted to know what it costs to insure the building. And if the historical foundation were to own the building, would they be able to afford the insurance?
That's another good question for the ownership question. That's a good point. All right, so to my friend and colleague to my left's point, the agenda item was to talk to the issue of really whether we want to patch it or not patch. I mean, take care of the roof or not take care of the roof. The other questions that are coming about, how if we choose tonight to go ahead with the roof, the rest of these things can be kind of fleshed out in time, as you all are able to assess the ability, the potential of this building doing anything at all, versus what to do with it and how to fund it, all those kinds of things that we're talking years down the road. So the question for tonight is, do we, as a board, wish to have the contract with ASA go forward and let him do the entire roof, starting with the patch for the winter. I would entertain a motion along those lines.
I'll make a motion to approve the quote by Asa Goodman to,
The 20,000?
$20,000.
That's
I
for
did
the
have it
46.
written. I just
You got it written?
remembered that I wrote it up.
Oh, I'll read it. I'm on the table.
It's the top one.
There you go.
I move to use insurance monies,
And it's scratched out next
yes,
line.
enter a contract with I make a motion to use insurance monies to enter a contract with Asa Goodman to re-roof this Cheney Mill on Town Garage Road for $20,000 to be completed in 2 phases. The first taking place this fall to stabilize the roof, with the remaining work to replace the roof will be completed in the spring.
Do I have a second? Greg is a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? I have some discussion. Can we phrase this in such a way, or in addition to such a way, to give some leeway with that 20, we're good up until 26, I think, thousand for the insurance, and make it for him to stay within the insurance cost.
Sure.
But if there's some cost overrides as he runs into rotten wood or something comes up along the way, rather than holding him to 20,000.
I'll make a motion to amend that dollar amount to $26,000.
Up to 26.
Up to
Up to
$26,000.
26. Do I have a second on his motion?
Second.
Yeah, I do have a
We
question.
have to rescind.
And that is there any part of it that says it will be paid by our insurance?
Says right here, up to use the enter.
Yeah, the beginning said using insurance
Okay.
money.
Yeah, for insurance money. So the way we have to do is we have to vote on his motion before we vote on his first motion.
You have to vote on my addendum.
Yes, your amendment. Do I have a second for his amendment?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion on his amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of his amendment to make it 26,000 instead of 20,000, up to
Up to.
26K. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes the amendment. Now, the motion. Do I have a second? I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? None. All in favor of the motion to contract with ASA to fix the garage roof, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this passes. Will you get in touch with ASA and let them know we get moving on that?
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. Judging only from the applause, I would like to make it very clear that doing things that are approved by people is not something we're used to.
Oh, yeah.
So don't get your hopes up. But this could continue. All right.
Paul,
Yes.
Michael had alluded to this earlier, but there was a $500 grant that needed to be applied for very quickly in order to do this assessment that he was talking about. And I just wanted the select board to know that the Historic Foundation it's a $500 cost. It's a $250 grant, and it has to have a matching $250. The Historic Foundation has voted to meet that match. So the $250 match is going to come from the Historic Foundation, and then sometime in the early part of next year, you'll get a report on the assessment of that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for the historical. This may be the beginning of a very interesting endeavor.
I think so.
I'll come back to visit you guys when it's done. Number 8. We're going to discuss, there's some difficulties at the transfer station with our recyclable containers. I'm listening for the pitter patter of feet. Those of you who are hanging on for this one, hang around, there's a lot more fun to come. Judy, you can do that for us.
Yes, as you know, we have been having some difficulty with the transfer station in terms of our electronics. And it has gotten worse since we last talked. I have a letter from Karen Noble from the her NAR area, and I can't read it all because it has some information, data that will really have to be talked about within an executive session. I will read what it says. Dear Judy and Greg, because Greg has been involved in it, I appreciate your time to talk with me about the Jamaica transfer station. Apologize for the delay in getting back with you. On July 18, 2018, I visited the Jamaica site and again on October the 11th. As the first time I visited, the regular attendant was on vacation. Signs were left during the first inspection, and on October the 11th, the 3 program signs set were displayed in 2 prominent areas of the facility. The following non-compliance must be corrected within 30 days. The issues were not at the October 11th visit according to the procedure for the environmentally sound management of electronic devices. And then it goes into the area that I'm really not able to read. And then it says, in addition, in order for the program to compensate the town for the collection of electronic waste, computer monitors, printers, television, and computer peripherals, the program devices must be kept separate from all other waste, electronic or otherwise, and the Gaylord must be labeled to identify the materials as covered and include the facility number. At the time of the inspection, this was not provided. Jamaica has 30 days to correct these items, and there are others too that I had received earlier on in August, demonstrate that it has come into voluntary compliance by November the 17th, 2018. Please provide photographs or other methods to identify that the items above have been addressed. And then should you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. So what I have been bringing up obviously has come to a head, where we are now actually in a conditional place and we have to do something. I did some inspections concerning the 2 containers in which are usable, I thought, for the electronics where they have been used, and both of them will not pass. The one where we have collected the electronics has holes rusted in the bottom of the area towards the back, and evidently rain comes in the front, and water is one of the biggest issues. The other container also has holes in it too, and I called up the company that actually rents these. Trying to think of what their name is. They're over in Manchester area, and they will rent us a container for $100 per month, and and I said to the woman that I was talking to whether or not we could patch up the holes in the containers, and she said it just won't last. You're really wasting your time. So with that, I did some homework and I went up to Jamaica Cottage, place where they sell the little houses. Actually, the one that we have for the swap shop is one of their particular houses, and I got some information concerning the major issue that we're running into is this, and I want to read it to you. This is from the Waste Electronic Devices from the Environmental Fact Sheet, and it says, how must Vermont e-cycle electronics be managed? Electronic waste must be stored at registered locations, which we are. 1, on a surface that prevents potentially hazardous waste materials in electronic devices from migrating, into the soil, groundwater, or surface water. 2, within a structure or transportation unit that protects the electronic devices from precipitation. 3, in a manner that prevents breakage during transportation, storage, and handling. Do not overfill gaylords or stack loose devices. Outdoor storage is prohibited at any time for any amount of time. For more information, contact them. So, we are, because the person who came down to inspect found some of our TVs were not placed in the gaylords, and also saw the area of leakage and knew that things were happening. That's why we are now on, what would you call it, suspension?
Top secret probation.
Double secret.
Double secret probation.
Can I ask you one question?
Probation.
Probation.
Are you finished?
Yeah, I have more to say.
Do we make money on
Yes,
a lot of money?
I don't know the full amount.
Is it a huge convenience to the town, or what if we didn't do it at all?
That's going to be our choice. We're either going to do something or we have to give up. And what that means is that we will not only be able to collect any TVs or peripherals, that's computers, printers, all of those. We will not be able to do that. And neither will we be able to collect little telephones or radios or things like that. That will all have to go probably down to winter solid waste on Ferry Road. So we will have to transport all of those materials.
Do they charge in Brattleboro for that stuff? That's not
Yes.
free down.
Yes.
But are there other locations that are closer than Brattleboro?
I think, I know that Londonderry picks it up.
And Winhall.
And
At
Winhall,
least.
yeah, those two. I'm not sure about Townsend. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
However,
Wardsboro?
what, huh?
Wardsboro?
No, Wardsboro actually brings it to us.
Oh, really?
Yes, we picked those. That is the one, there are 3 areas in which we do not have to have people registered for, and pay taxes in order to bring things into our transfer station. 1 is electronics, 2 is refrigeration, and 3 is metal. Those 3 things are a service to many communities. All the other, the 2 bins that are the 30 and 40 size, yes, you have to have your sticker to get in the transfer station and put those things in. So we basically will not be able to collect unless we do something. And I have, I think, a very strong suggestion, and because I would like to see it, I think that the people of our community will not be very happy if we start saying to them, you can't bring in these things anymore, you've got to travel to these other places when you do. As you know, the swap shop came from the Jamaica cottage shop. I went up there the other day to do some trying to find out exactly what we could do. And they have what they call a fully assembled, we wouldn't have to assemble it, and economy grade. That means the wood is not #1 class, but still workable. We can either get a 10 by 14, and I measured the size of the gaylords, and they're 30 by 40, so we could probably, in a size 10 by 14, get 6 or so into that container. Generally, when they come to pick up the electronics, they usually are picking up 6. or we can go to a 10 by 16. The 10 by 14 is $3,074, and the 10 by 16 is $3,514. I think this is the way to go. When we put up the swap shop, the town road crew actually got the area gravelled out. You need to have 3 or 4 inches of small gravel, and the building is set on that. It has doors on it, and one of the rules that I read to you was that there can be nothing else in the container kept there. So I think we really need to go that route, and that we just have to afford that. We have not had much expenditure. I've been the supervisor for almost 6 years now. The only thing that I have had to spend is to accommodate having the swap shop, which is a very popular thing that we do have, where people come from all different parts to get things and put things in. So I think that this is an expense that we need to do for the services of our community and around us. So I would like to propose that we do that. If you want to see a picture of it, it's the columns that are here on the orange side.
I'd like to add a little bit. I totally agree that, that something needs to be done. Obviously, it's not in compliance, and looking at some other options to try to fix the containers that are there. They would be kind of a cop job. I mean, we'd put a door on it, and then that would fall, and then it's all rusted out. And I do agree too that I think it's a service to the town that we need to continue. Whether or not we continue to accept Wardsboros and other towns, I don't know how much extra volume that adds to us. Are we gonna get to the point where we can't kind of keep up with it with the spacing that we're talking about? I don't know that answer. But one of the other things I did want to throw out there, don't know if it's a viable option. I haven't called anybody, but just looking quickly, I've seen that you can get a new container, a used container, but they're in much better shape than we've got, for in the range of $2,000 to $2,500, as opposed to renting one. I'm definitely opposed to the idea of renting one. I just don't think renting is something like that doesn't make sense.
It's $1,200 a year.
Yeah. You can own it in 2 years.
Our shed would cost us $3,000.
Yeah.
Well, with the gravel, it would cost about $4,000 total.
I just like to throw that out as another option to maybe research a little bit more.
What would you think the lifespan of that would be? I mean, how long have we had?
I have no idea how long those have been.
Actually, Lou was here. I think he got them when they were, so.
And I don't know what shape they were in the beginning.
Yeah.
But getting used, we don't know if those were new.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a little bit of different, not to say better, but different site prep work could be done. Right now, there was site prep work done, but they do sit on the dirt,
Right.
which just pulls moisture up into them, and that's where they're all rusted out on the bottom. There's holes in the floor and in the back on the bottom of the walls, and that's not really coming from water coming from the top. But I think if they were built up on better stone, better drainage, maybe on some concrete footings, they would have a much longer lifespan. And you'd probably need to do that same kind of prep work, whether you put a shack or, a Jamaica hut in there.
Yeah, well, that is what we, actually, as I said, when the swap shop was put in.
Yeah, it's built up,
They got the gravel, we had to pay for it, but they put it down for us.
And there's some concrete blocks and whatnot.
I personally like the idea of the wooden one rather than the metal, because I think over time, we're gonna run into the same problem, where we can preserve the wood by putting oil on it or something like that to preserve it. And I think it just looks better too, so.
I agree with the aesthetic is better. Mike, what about disposal of the current
That's a very good question. I don't even know where to go. It's the company that I was talking about was Door, D-O-O-R, yeah, over in the Manchester area. And that's who I talked to. And she really said,
Throw them in the metal pile.
I was actually thinking, would they take it for
I
metal?
would imagine they would.
Somebody
take
would want
Yeah.
that. It's gonna steal
that
it.
our regular
would be-
hauling company would
right.
take those away.
I think we
Okay.
need to keep one for tires
And for the compost.
and for compost.
yeah,
And
there's one
probably
is
the
still
one
fine.
that has the door on it.
We could even keep both of them and just use it for
Yeah,
tires and
we
use
could.
the other one for organic
We could.
waste and,
Yeah.
you know, still keep 3 of them up there.
Can I go back to the question that Andy posed about the cost? You're saying we're making money on the
Yes,
electronics?
they pay us.
Who is paying us?
The electronic people, Ford.
It's a recycling company
That-
that
yeah, the
handles
recycling piece.
recycling of
Uh,
those.
We don't really.
But
I don't know.
no, what we do collect on is what's called the non-collectible, which is cell phones, recorders, that kind of stuff. And I have a
Those are
list.
non-collectible.
No, they're called hazardous, and we do collect those, but let's see if I can find my list for the non-covered page through.
Well, we charge a fee to somebody
I
who's
do
dropping
my-
it off for those non-collectibles,
Yes.
but we also make something, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'm curious what
Off
that
of
would be.
the
You make
other-
$3,000 a year, then we're breaking
Yeah,
even, basically.
right, exactly. These are banned electronics that are called non-covered devices. Personal electronics such as digital assistants and personal music players, all telephones, including cell phones, answering machines, fax machines, and we do collect these. Video cassette recorders, digital versatile disc players, digital converter boxes, stereo equipment, power supply cords, electronic devices, and electronic games.
Now you say we do collect those?
We collect those and we have to have them, we pay for them, but the people pay us
So
for
we
them.
charge for
I
those?
charge.
We
That was
charge,
the question.
right. We do not charge for TVs
All right,
and
so-
all other peripherals.
Can I ask,
What do we want to do?
well, that's it, can I ask that we get the financials before we make a decision on what we want to do?
That we what now?
We find out how much money we're making on these
We
things?
have the time though. If we-
I don't think we have time, because
Which
we're
time
gonna
do we have?
lose the ability to collect come, what was the
Well, we
date?
don't-
you gave us?
17th of November.
17th, we would still have
17th of
one, we still
Yeah,
have one
we got a
meeting.
select board meeting coming
Yeah,
up.
But then how quickly?
but we have to act quickly.
Yeah,
I
then we
don't know.
have to get, we have to order, the building.
I'm still not sure we did the,
We've
well,
got a real, they had time frame problems and we have really time frame
I
problems.
make a motion, we discontinue collecting any of that stuff.
I'll second that motion. So we can have a discussion. We now have a
Yeah,
first and a
because
second.
That's what we're doing anyway, might as well have it in.
Yeah.
Do we, are we, I think that's, we've been talking about assuming we're gonna continue. Your position is maybe we shouldn't continue.
It sounds like it's kind of a challenge, and now we're incurring the expense of another building, which, you know, we could have somebody build it, or we could have one brought there, but, I mean, is the town really gonna be upset if they,
Yes.
I know what, I can tell you something that happened with televisions. They changed them, or the providers changed something, so a lot of people, we've had a run on TVs because they're no good anymore. They did something to them
Yeah.
where they don't pick the signal up right without either one of those boxes, or you gotta get a smart TV or whatever.
Yeah, they do.
So TVs were piling up there, but that has to come to an end sometime.
Mhm.
You know, the big ones with the big backs.
Right, yeah. And I'd be curious to know how many come from other towns, Wardsboro,
A lot.
and would our facility, as it is now, be able to be upgraded temporarily, maybe even, to handle half of the volume, let's just say, I mean, and not use the backs of the units and just put it.
No, we can't. As
Well,
long
but-
as
but if
there
you
are
don't-
holes in the ground, holes in the metal, we cannot use those containers any longer.
Okay.
My
I was
question-
thinking we could use it in the front, but I'm sorry, yeah.
My question to the state would be, so we're back against the wall. the motion is on the floor to say we discontinue. What if we took an approach that says, let's wait 2 weeks, let's get the dollar amounts back, see if we're breaking even or not. If in 2 weeks we decide it's not feasible monetarily, we pull the plug and we don't lose anything. If we do decide to do it, could we go back to the state and say, we're in the process of getting a new building built or delivered, but it's not gonna be here by the 17th, but we are working to do this, and we just couldn't work in the time frame that you gave us.
Yeah.
Just because government doesn't go that quickly. So that would be another option, is buying us time and taking the time to do some more research, so, not making a decision tonight, doing more research and then having a better idea of how.
I would certainly like to see some numbers before we decide.
Definitely would like to see some.
What kind of numbers are you looking
I
for?
want to know how much we're making, how much we're spending,
Okay.
what's coming in, how much is going out.
Yeah, well, we're not, on TVs, we're not collecting any money on that.
Okay, yeah, that's just,
I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I meant,
Yeah,
on
but
what we charge for.
on all of the other hazardous ones, what that would mean is nobody could put any of those things in our area.
Right, but then what do people do? They throw it in a garbage bag and they throw it away.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of things,
And
that's the
then if
fear
we
that.
find it in our
that
garbage
when
and we get caught, then we're in trouble there
or on
also.
the flip
It's not
side,
environmentally sound either.
the other option is to go over the side of the road, which happens a lot as well.
Right.
I just think as a suggestion, we should have some numbers before we make the decision.
On how much we
Fine.
make?
Yeah, before we start spending money on stuff, we gotta know how much money we're getting.
I have a problem with that. We
I do.
easily spend money on, not that they don't deserve it, new trucks. We spend over $100,000 on trucks, and what you're arguing over is $4,000. I think, and there has been very, very little money going into this transfer station. It is pretty much of a self kind of run thing. So I really have a problem with that call.
That what has nothing to do with my motion, was I didn't ask for financials or anything, I just simply put that out there. Because the transfer station has run smoothly, except for this. And I know it's a convenience to the town. That's all I gotta say about it. I don't think it should hinge on just the financials.
I don't think it should hinge on it, but it would certainly be nice to be informed.
May I speak, if you don't mind?
And not at this point. Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table. We have interest in the audience, but the way the procedures work, we have discussion on the board. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the board? Hearing no discussion. All in favor of the motion that's been put on the board to discontinue the collection of electronics, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
Motion does not carry. Therefore, we now have time to pursue the financials and deal with it next select board.
Can public talk?
Now we can talk, yes.
I'm just curious about where the financials are. There's a town treasurer, right?
Yes.
And how hard is it to get this information?
Well, she's not here now, so we'll do it tomorrow.
And then the board can reconsider it immediately?
No, we'll have the information for the next
Or it
meeting.
has to wait to,
Yeah. That information would have been helpful to have tonight, but we don't have it, so we'll get it from the treasurer tomorrow, or whenever she.
which puts the town at risk of not making the deadline?
Yeah, I don't know whether I can convince Karen. I've actually been having conversations with her frequently, so I may be able to say, can we hold off for at least 2 more weeks or another month, but that we're working on. I think that
I would
is.
think if we had ordered the shed and said,
Right.
here
And
is
it's
the
in the
order from
process
Jamaica
of
Cottage
being
Shop, and
done,
we
yeah.
delivered on December 3rd,
Right,
that they're not gonna say, too bad, so
Right,
sad.
yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine.
I
that
can't either,
this-
so I think that that's a.
I believe, I understand the state's interest is to have facilities doing this sort of stuff their way. If they have a facility, that's half the battle. Now to get it to do it their way may take a little bit more time. I suspect that they are in favor of us continuing this.
Oh, I think
Doesn't sound like it.
yes.
Lots of things they do.
I think we've already discussed that,
Yeah, but
what we need to do.
The other
I
question,
suspect they'll go along with it.
yeah, the other question I have is there $4,000 somewhere? Is there, are there pools of money we have? Is there, can we take it out of the capital
Check it
fund?
out.
So that would be the other thing, is the money actually there? Or are we
Transfer station has
jeopardizing
money.
our budget?
Do we do how much?
Huh?
The transfer station has money, doesn't it?
It has some.
Yeah, I think it does
Okay.
have some.
But
I mean,
we get
I like, that's the other question I'd like to ask, is
I'm
there
not
adequate
really
funds
sure
to do
how
this
much
without
it does have.
jeopardizing, you know, the budgets? So,
Yeah.
and if it's in there,
But
we
maybe
can
that's
move things
true, I
around,
never
that's fine.
thought about it, but we might have our own money, our
Yeah,
own pond.
yeah, and if that's there, then it's a
Yeah.
no-brainer, you know?
All right, so what we're going to do this evening is we're going to table the question until next meeting, at which time we will have, you will bring us the financial numbers, so we'll know what we have in our coffers earmarked for this. How much is coming in, how much is going out,
Okay.
and we can make an intelligent guess about how best to go forward. Does that get everybody's
I
approval?
don't think it's tabling the question, but it can be on the agenda next time.
I'll put it on the agenda for next time. Yes,
There's
sir.
nothing to table.
There was nothing that.
Well, I don't know the definition of tabling this.
And
Tabling.
Except
Putting
what
off
do
the
I-
motion till next
what do I
time.
do
That's right,
about,
motion, correct, okay.
when is our next meeting? Is it
Twen-
like the 13th?
It's, no, it's the second November,
This-
It's
the
the
second?
12th.
the 12th,
The
12th of
second,
November.
yeah, we're close.
We are close.
I think,
No, the fifth. Oh, yeah, that's-
No, it's the
No,
second.
the 17th of November is my deadline.
So on the 12th, the 13th, we can give them an answer.
Okay, I guess what I'll do is give her a call and tell
Let her
her
know if they,
Yeah.
where we are and what we're in the process of doing. But I will make it very clear, I am not in favor of not having that ability.
Yes,
For our
I've heard-
townspeople.
I understand that,
Just a minute, please, I'm not finished speaking.
but we've already
I
discussed
am
that.
not finished speaking, and I will wait
Well,
for you.
Let's,
And
civil.
I am being civil. I feel very strongly that this is a service that we offer the town and actually people around the town that wishes to bring these things here. And I would hate to see it happen. So I just want that on the official record.
All right, on the official record, I heard that the first time.
All righty then. Any other further new discussion on this item? Failing that, let's go on to number 9.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I want to speak on this particular problem, and you told me to wait.
On public concerns.
Let's hold that until the public concerns. Can you hold it for a minute? Sure. Because we're finished with this for practical purposes. I'd like to move on and get some other stuff done real quick.
I have to wait.
The water feasibility study. This should be quick. I talked to Chrissy today. The test results are in. She got them all Friday, finally. She will have the water feasibility survey project to report to us also on our next select board meeting. She's going to send a copy of the report to all of us ahead of time so we have some idea of what we're talking about before we get on the movie. So it'll be ready on the 12th. Select board members will get a heads up on the 2nd of November, or by the 2nd of November.
You wanna do mine before public concerns?
Yeah, let's, there's two quick things. One thing is, we want to do really fast.
I'm
before
gonna
we
go
do
the
that.
other side. Oh, something else to do?
No, yeah, go ahead. Do
Okay,
yours.
so I'm stepping off the select board to talk about Jamaica Community Arts. There is gonna be the haunted house hub tour. There's gonna be a haunted house at the town hall. And I was approached by some of the organizers asking if they could use the closet, the locked closet in the back, and I don't know what, someone jumps out or something. And there's equipment stored in there, and they're like, "Can we just take the equipment out and store it somewhere else?" And I said, "It's not Jamaica Community Arts equipment, it's town equipment." So I would figure I would ask the select board if it would be okay for me to take it over to my home, obviously right down the road, store it there until after the 31st, then I'll bring it back up and make sure it's safe and I'll take responsibility for it. But I wanted to ask before we just went and lugged, $1,000 of equipment over to my house.
It's electronic equipment?
It's the PA system and the two speakers.
Is it the way in the back, or is it the little closet that is?
It's way in the back, it's the one, it's behind the stage, because the whole haunted house is up, you go up on the stage and they
Yeah.
send you through all kinds of shoots and things, but it went into the closet back there, so. Again, I don't know how much the equipment's worth, but I will take responsibility for it personally and be willing to do it. Again, I just wanted to ask before we just went and did something.
I think that's okay.
Okay.
Sure.
The
we need a motion to that effect?
You can't change
I
that.
don't believe we do need a motion.
I think we're in agreement.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
And thank you for taking that on.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
One last thing before we go on to public concerns. I haven't forgotten about you. We got a letter from Cord Cobridge, who is the executive director of the VCTV Brattleboro Community Television, inviting us all to their producer awards party, which is Thursday, October the 25th, down at 118 Elliott Street in Brattleboro. And this is for the producer awards is for all these people who put this package together over the years. And they do such good work in making sure that our messages are up to the community. And I wanted to share that with you. There's going to be awards, videos, a light dinner, cash bar, and there's a $5 donation suggested. But we are all invited, everybody in the community. They do a great job for us. I appreciate it. And a lot of work. This is the what did I say, 26th? Soon.
It's this Thursday.
The 25th, Thursday, 6 to 8 in Brattleboro. Okay, that's the last thing I had, and then we had public concerns that you were on hold for that. Sorry, sir.
I would like to suggest, with regard to the transfer station, that in addition to looking at the finances for the electronics, I would like to hear how the $3 bags that we've been using for several years is without any reduction in my taxes. So now I am paying for it as depositing my garbage. How that's working out financially. And you know, if it's working out, you know, is it possible that this shed, shack, container is viable vis-a-vis the additions that we as town members are paying to deposit our garbage in addition to paying for it vis-a-vis taxes?
So you're basically asking if the money we're already putting in for bags is going to cover the cost of the new building?
Well, no, I'd like to know whether it's a possible, you know, is it negative even?
Sure.
Is it positive? Is it, you know, what's happening?
Can you answer that question with Jim Jerry?
I know the reason why we went to bags, and that was that the distribution of the cost, and you're gonna have to tell me if I'm right or wrong, the distribution of the cost was actually being shared by people who use a lot of bags and a lot of garbage or trash. I have to remember, garbage is food stuff and trash is all the other. That we were sharing the cost as residents. And what has happened now is that we only are paying according to how much trash we actually use in our own households. And that was supposed to help diffuse, I guess would be, not diffuse, it would stop diffusing the cost around, but putting more on the shoulders of people who were using 4 and 5 bags every 2 weeks versus my 1 bag every 2 weeks. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. In other words, what you're saying is, may I paraphrase?
Sure.
That the average resident was subsidizing those people who had business collecting trash.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine and dandy, but, you know, there was no compensation to the average resident in terms of taxes. So, you know, we're now, as a private resident, I'm now paying twice as much for my disposal of the garbage, i.e. my taxes and the individual bags. So that's fine. I mean, it seems to work out okay, you know. I always looked at it from the standpoint that those bags are labeled Jamaica, which means that if you're a non-resident, you can't put it in.
Correct.
And that's not necessarily so, because you can buy those bags at a variety of different places, and nobody, well, maybe it's because I know Dan, but nobody seems to ask me for my ID,
Yeah.
which is another problem. But
That
all I want to know is, what is the revenue of all those bags amount to?
Did we not in the early months of this decide that we were having to get those things emptied less often?
Yes,
It affected our,
Yes.
isn't our assessment get affected, hasn't things have changed with where our garbage goes, right? The assessment thing, what,
you mean who is the hauler? Is that
our
what you're
assessment
referring to?
with Brattleboro.
Oh, yes, actually, our assessment has reduced in terms of what we pay. We were up to $14,000 or $15,000 to Brattleboro, and now we're down to $9,000. Because we are no longer shipping our things down through TAM and through them. That's why we're, that has been, so I'm curious around our budget. I've never really compared our budget to, I can look at that to see.
But
if our
are you
budget is
talking about
compared.
14,000 per annum?
Yes, to be a member of the Wyndham Solid
So it was
Waste
14,000, and now what is it?
About 9.
So there's your $3,000.
That's true.
And I don't think it would reflect on your taxes unless you were a huge landowner, didn't we discuss that it wouldn't show the average?
Well, just to make things more confusing, part of why this is so confusing is subsequent to all those discussions, the entire way we collect and transfer trash, the agencies involved, the companies involved, where it goes, all that's changed. There's very little to compare today with when we started doing it that way. So make apples to apples comparison is going to be a nightmare, but we could certainly make an attempt at it. But be aware that things have changed dramatically.
Wouldn't it be nice if after all of this mathematics and budgeting and everybody looked at it and you guys came to the town and said, guess what? Those $3 bags are now going to be $2.50.
Sure, that would be nice.
We could say that, but we're not going to.
You know, part of the difficulty, and this just speaks to the global nastiness of this, there's one dump in Vermont, correct?
Up north.
Landfill, I'm sorry, landfill.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of commotion about what's gonna happen with that. That's gonna fill up here pretty soon.
They just made a
Yes.
figure, yes.
Yeah,
Big
so
deal.
that's it for the whole state. So all the other little pockets of acrimony that take place every time something like this comes up, it's gotta be seen in the global picture. The next
Well-
choice is bury your backyard. So it is complicated, and I know she's put a huge amount of effort trying to make sense out of all this stuff, because there's all kinds of traffic between Brattleboro and TAM and Wyndham Regional,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the stuff that goes on, so it's
actually, we're even in a very bad way around what is happening with our recyclables. I don't know if you've been reading, where no longer China is taking any of our recyclables, and they've got barges floating around trying to figure out where to dump them. And I think there are like 15 others, very tiny countries that are taking our recyclables. And it's not enough. Our nation is having a major problem of what to do with recyclables.
Well, you got to sue DuPont and let them recycle it for you.
At any rate, yes, we can check on those numbers.
Yeah, we
That would be
can.
something we could put on the agenda for that as well.
Thank you very much.
But I think that is a good idea, whether we are reducing our budget at all. I have a feeling that we're not, but it's a good question why.
What'd you call that, pay as you throw last year?
Yeah, that's what it's called, pay as you throw.
All righty.
The rules have become much more stringent about all of this. I'll tell you, over my 6 years, it's unbelievable.
Joel, do you have something for us?
Just quickly, you know that I'm on the Transportation
Right.
Committee and also SEBT, that V-Trans is now conducting yet another Route 30 corridor study, and Wyndham Regional is having some meetings with select boards and also with public. I don't know if you've gotten notices for them yet. Just to make the community aware that, again, there's an attempt to get some bus service up Route 30 along with other improvements.
Okay, that's a good point.
Question to the chair. Who is behind this study and the decision-making that would flow from the study? What governmental body?
Vermont Transit, Agency of Transportation.
But you referred to Wyndham something.
Wyndham Regional Commission.
Is doing the study
Well,
for Vermont?
the study is promoted and the study is being done by V-Trans. So V-Trans is now interested in doing Route 30 corridor improvement. Wyndham Regional is, to be honest, Wyndham Regional gets a 20% influence on V-Trans, but V-Trans is the ultimate agency that would implement its services or fund them.
And like Wyndham Regional's mission statement, are they to advocate for our towns if we're represented by commissioners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are,
That's how they come into play.
and they're going to initiate meetings with town select boards now.
They're advocating.
Right, and also SEBT, which is a 5013, it runs the buses, the mover and the current. And they would be the agency, the non-governmental agency that would actually create bus service. But now V-Trans is also interested in any other improvements besides bus services that can be funded for the towns. And it would behoove the towns to be very involved with this.
Thank you. Any other issues for the board, public concerns?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adjourning? Any opposed? We are adjourned at 8:32. No closing part, we have things to sign.